we'll go ahead and get started. So I am Mrs. Engelman. I am the high school counselor at Central Cass, and we moved to the theater space this year, just thinking it would be a little more spacious for everybody. If you need writing utensils or anything like that, I have post-it notes, pens down here. There's also these lovely handy desk popper-upper things. If you need something to write on, feel free to move to the front, and you'll have all your needs met right here. With me tonight, I have a couple people that are pretty important and very helpful as we talk about financial aid going into after high school. We have Emma Ambrosius, or Mrs. Ambrose. She is our high school counseling intern this semester, and she's in the back. So she is here as a resource also for your senior and our families. And then with us too, we have Cory Schlack from NDSU. He's with the financial aid office, so he'll go through the presentation. Couple quick notes before we start. I'm going to walk you through our scholarship page on the website, just to make sure you all know where it's at. So if your senior comes to you and says, I have never heard of the scholarship page, you can say, yes, you have. Our scholarship page is under the departments and academics tab. This is kind of an important landing page to know about. When you need an official transcript sent from Central Cass, this is the link you'll click, and then I fill that transcript request. So forever and ever and ever, in 10 years down the road, if you need a transcript, you will contact the high school and we send your transcripts. For Central Cass seniors, you can send your own transcripts. It's considered unofficial, but you can send it using e-transcript and getting into your Power School. Parents, you can also see your student's transcript. It just looks a little bit different. This is a tutorial that tells you how to do that. There's a space in their Power School called Ed Portal, and it has to do with this little square and arrow. So I know that the seniors know what it is, but in your parent Power School, you will also have something like that, and you can access and look at your students' e-transcript. So this just tells you how to do that. Okay. And the other thing is our scholarship page. Mrs. Holland put this together for us quite a few years ago, and then I just populate the page with some information. Scholarship search websites and FastWeb are in here. Different tips and hacks for you when you're writing scholarships or applying. FM Area Foundation is a local scholarship search engine that you can use. North Dakota scholarship information if you're on track for that. Then we also have the North Dakota Career Builders Scholarship and Loan Repayment Program, where North Dakota funds some money for students going into identified career shortage areas, and there are a lot. When I showed the seniors this, I think there were 95 pages of identified career shortage areas in North Dakota, and then the North Dakota Grants and Scholarship page. And as we go down our list, this is where I put all the scholarships that get sent to me. It's kind of big and everything, it feels like it's a giant rabbit hole, but just bear with me. So all the scholarships are organized in tab form by due date. So as you go through this, you're going to notice the fall I don't have a lot posted in here, but you have live links to the scholarship, when they're due, who qualify for this, the award, what it ranges from. And they're all organized by the bottom tab. So when I get into March, oftentimes I'll just print this whole sheet off, and on the side it actually has some of them have QR codes, so the seniors, when they're walking down the hallway, if they see one that they could qualify for, they can just snap a picture and go to the site. I will also, this one has quite a bit in March. I also try and highlight the scholarships bright yellow, just to catch attention for students too. So that's our scholarship spreadsheet. That's right here. If you're really into spreadsheets, there's a tracking spreadsheet here for you too, but you can also use a handy notebook too. I won't drag you down that Excel hole either. As you go a little further, this is our senior newsletter. If you have a junior or sophomore, you only get one newsletter every year from me, so this is where it's at, and it basically loops back around to everything that we've talked about. It has the same links for sending transcripts, the scholarship page, all of those things are also covered in it. Okay, along with tonight we'll record our financial aid meeting presentation, and then I'll upload it into YouTube and I'll post that on our the senior newsletter as well. So if you find tonight absolutely riveting, you are welcome to rewatch it as many times as you'd like from the comfort of your home. I think one thing I missed on here, and I must have accidentally updated it, but is also the Dollars for Scholars link. Now that I notice it's not in here, but I will have that back up in this area too. Central Cass Dollars for Scholars is a scholarship organization locally and in the state of North Dakota that will provide your student scholarship. 100% of our graduating seniors qualify for this scholarship. It's just a matter of submitting the application. So if a student fills in the profile, the more complete your profile is, the better match for funds you'll get. Okay, Ms. Haley will work with you next semester to write an essay for that and for some other scholarships too and give you some feedback. But you're not taking funds from anybody else. Those funds are specifically for Central Cass graduating seniors, and the more students apply, the more money is given away. We've had as high as 80% of our senior graduating class get a scholarship from Dollars for Scholars. It would be wonderful if your class was the group that got 100%. If you're not going to college, they will defer your scholarship for up to 4 years for use. So let's say you still have to apply, submit everything this year, but you can contact the organization and say, I'm taking a gap year, or I'm entering the military, I won't use the funds this year, and you just defer the funds for down the road. So it's a good organization, and I'll get that back in here too. I must have just overlooked it. A couple other things, remind notifications for seniors. When we get heavy on the scholarship deadlines, I'll send out on a Sunday night at 8 o'clock, I'll send out reminder, Dollars for Scholars is due in 1 week, okay? I use it again after you graduate. There's some dual credit scholarships out there. I'll resend that. North Dakota Dollars for Scholars also has some other funds out there for your current college students. Federal aid information, are you ready? And then the Bank of North Dakota College site. So that's just our website that you can find some information on. So I hope that's a little bit helpful. And with that, I will let Cory take the floor.
Thank you very much. I hope students, as you were looking at that, you'd recognize that there are a lot of scholarships out there. So many, in fact, that it probably does get a little bit overwhelming, which, I mean, amazing job that you put all those things into tabs, I mean, literally to make it easier for students. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten text messages from students saying, hey, I've already applied for the NDSU scholarships. Where else can I apply? And I will end up just giving them the link back to their own high schools and like, here are all the resources. So, I mean, awesome job on doing that. Very well done. And also, another big thing that I'd like to point out is that there are a lot of scholarships out there. And one of the big questions we always get is like, how do I get a full ride? Like, you know, where's this full ride scholarship? And I'll tell you that full ride scholarships really don't exist, right? Even the football players at NDSU don't have a full ride. What is actually happening oftentimes is either one of two things is happening. Either a student is misconstruing full ride with like a full tuition scholarship, but that's not going to cover their housing, it's not going to cover their meal plan, it's just covering the bill to pay for their tuition. Or what they're explaining is that they do have a full ride, but it's not just from one singular source. It's because they apply for scholarships at their university. It's because they applied for scholarships at their high school. It's because they applied for Dollars for Scholars. It's because they did the FMary Foundation. Because of this scholarship, this scholarship, this scholarship, this scholarship, and maybe even their financial aid, all those things put in totality now has actually put them at a position of having a full ride. So it's for those that are really being diligent about getting out there and applying for these different scholarships and stacking multiple scholarships on top of one another. Those are the students that are really reducing their overall cost. And today, honestly, today is mostly going to be about that type of conversation. Let's see if there's a button down. There we go, that worked. So my name is Cory Schlack. I'm an admission counselor. I'm actually located in the Office of Admission, not financial aid. But the thing is that admission counselors, while we're very similar to high school counselors, we're really here to help with all those college steps and processes. So a lot of times at this point in time in a student, just have a raise of hands. How many of you are seniors right now? Okay, hands down. Do we have any juniors in here? Or Or sophomores? Anybody? Just seniors? Okay, I was gonna say if you're a junior right now, you really can't be applying for scholarships. Scholarships are typically applied for like the upcoming year, not for the current year. Not for the next year. But while we help with like applying for admission and we help with housing and roommates and all those things, a lot of conversations, specifically as we get closer to March, April, and May, revolve around financial aid and how to maximize your opportunities and reduce your overall costs and ultimately reduce what you have for student loans, right? Because that's what we want to try to reduce is general student loans. So what this presentation is not just how to do the FAFSA, it's really a high-level review of everything, right? And one thing I always want to point out is that you may have a unique situation and there's no way, shape, or form any presentation could cover every single person's unique situations, but this presentation will really cover probably about 95% of the questions you have, and if you do have a unique situation, that's an opportunity to set up an appointment with the financial aid office or with an admission counselor to go over that unique situation to then figure out what the answer is. But for the most part, I would say almost everybody will be able to leave tonight feeling like they're pretty confident in what to do next. So what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about the total cost. Like, what is the cost that you're looking at when you're looking at college A, B, C? But then what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate and we're going to talk about the bottom line. Like, what are you actually going to pay for after you consider financial aid, after you consider scholarships? One of my favorite examples is that I had a student that was on the East Coast that had been admitted to NDSU, and he was saying something along the lines of, hey, I got offered a $35,000 scholarship per year at college B. Can NDSU match that? And I was like, do you know how much it costs to go to NDSU for a year? $20,000. I can't give you $35,000. That means that not only we're going to cover everything, but we're also going to give you $15,000 a year, every year. I don't know if you know how this works. Like, we don't have that kind of money. But it's ultimately, what are you going to pay when you take all of those things into consideration, right? We're going to talk about the sources of financial aid. We're going to talk about the sources of scholarship. Ultimately, how can you reduce your overall costs? How can you reduce your overall loans? And at the very end, I'll go over some really a lot of the most frequently asked questions, things that oftentimes come up as we're going through the financial aid process. So first and foremost, I just want to give us a rough estimate of what college costs these days, right? If you've been going on tours of colleges, you probably have a good idea of what it costs to go to college. At NDSU, this is what your cost is going to be for the upcoming year if you were to go to NDSU. As you go on tours, you'll see that there are going to be colleges that fall far above this, and there are going to be colleges that might fall beneath this. NDSU is pretty much in the middle of the pack, if not actually maybe a little bit below the middle of the pack for those who have gone on tours. But this is roughly what you're looking at, right? Somewhere between like $20,000, $25,000. And now this is going to count for your tuition, your student fees, your housing, your meals, okay? So roughly this is the number that you got to be starting to think about for next year. And I think that's always important because sometimes people don't look at that number until they get to May. And they're like, oh my gosh, college is $25,000? Like, where are we going to get that money? Well, you're all here right now, so you're trying to figure out where you're going to get that money. So now when we talk about the bottom line, it's really, what are you going to owe? So if you're looking at college A or B and it's $23,000, that's the upfront cost, what are you going to pay after you take into account financial aid and scholarships? So now, maybe you're getting $5,500 in scholarships and financial aid. So what are you actually going to pay? Well, you're only going to be left with $17,500. I'm not going to say that that's easy to pay, but it's certainly easier than $23,000. So that's your bottom line at the end of the day. So when I was talking about that student from the East Coast who said, can you match that $35,000 a year scholarship? I said, well, how much does it cost to go to that college? And he said, $90,000 a year. Like, oh, okay, well then you're still left with $55,000 a year. So do you really want that $35,000 scholarship? Like, you know, is it really that big of a deal if you still have $55,000 left to pay each year? So anyways, that's really the big thing you want to get back to at the very end of the day. And the nice thing is that most colleges, if not all colleges, will give you this. Typically, it's after your FAFSA has been processed and your scholarship applications have been processed. After they know what you're getting, then they can give you what your estimated cost is going to be. That typically is going to come out in March or April, then giving you a small window of like 2 months to be able to look at your costs, figure out which college is going to be the right fit for you, financially speaking. Okay, so where are these pools of money? Where can you actually start to turn over some stones and try to find some additional dollars to help pay for college? I always think about it with these 6 buckets, and I suggest looking at these buckets in reading order, so from top left down to bottom right. So the first area you want to look at is the federal, then moving to state, then to the collegiate scholarships that you're looking at, employers, personal, that's a big one too. Obviously that's not like money you didn't know about, but it's also an area that I think is important to keep in mind as well as your personal, because that should be considered before you move to the last bucket, which is loans. Raise your hand if you are super excited to take out a loan for college. No way, no way. Nobody's excited to take out loans for college, but they are a reality. Most students will take out some loans when it comes to college. My goal here is to try to reduce that as much as humanly possible, right? And if you do have to take out loans, let's talk about which loans to take out then. Okay, so that's where we're going to be focusing a lot of our efforts tonight, is looking at all these different spots that you can be applying for to get some additional resources. And the first one that we talked about is the federal one. Okay, so the federal bucket, and this really ultimately comes down to the FAFSA. Please raise your hand if you submitted a FAFSA within the last 5 years. Okay, we have one hand. Can you raise your hand if you submitted one last year? Okay. Last year was a huge year for the FAFSA. They really did a lot of new things with it, and for those that it worked for, it worked immensely well. But for those that didn't work for, it really got bogged down. But basically, in a rough nutshell, what is the FAFSA? The FAFSA is an application that you submit to the federal government. And in that application, it's going to have your income, it's going to have your wealth, it's going to have your assets, it's going to have a total financial picture of you as a family. So your dependent, your son or daughter, you as parents or guardians, right? It's going to have that complete financial picture. And what they're going to do then is they're going to come up with something called a student aid index. And that number will then be delivered to the universities to tell you if you have financial need or not. And based on that financial need number, you may qualify for 3 types of assistance from the federal government: grants, work study, and loans. Grants, those are the best. Grants are free money to go to school. It is like a scholarship. You never have to pay that money back. But it's completely dependent on your financial need as a family. So the general rule of thumb is those with, I'll say, modest income, wealth, assets, you don't have a huge ability to qualify for federal grants. Those with less income, wealth, assets, you may qualify for grants. And grants can be substantial. This is the federal Pell Grant that we're talking about. And last year it was equal to, if you got the maximum, because it's on a sliding scale, but if you got the maximum, it was equal to $7,395. Now, you put that into perspective to the $20,000 it would cost to go to NDSU, that's about 35 to 40% of your total cost, right? So that's a substantial amount of money there that we're talking about when it comes to grants. If you qualify for that grant, you're also going to qualify for the Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. It's a much smaller amount, it's only $600, but hey, $600, that brings you, if you add that to the Pell Grant, now you're up to about $8,000. So again, every little bit counts here. You cannot be considered for this if you do not submit the FAFSA. Now, you can also be eligible for work study. Now, work study is very convoluted, and to really get into the granular perspectives of work study, we'd have to take more time, so I'm just going to say this. You do not need to qualify for work study if you want to work an on-campus job. So, for example, at NDSU, there are about 1,000 on-campus jobs for students who want to work. We hire maybe 300 work study eligible students and 700 non-work study eligible students. So if you want to work for the Bison Athletics, or if you want to work for the Wellness Center, if you want to work for the Dining Center, you want to be a tour guide, you want to work in the union, you want to work in the bookstore, blah, 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 you can work there with or without work study, so don't get too hung up on work study. The last thing is loans. And again, nobody's excited to take out loans, but again, the reality is most students will take out some loans. And if you are going to take out any loans at all, the best loans and the ones that I would suggest first are going to be your federal loans, because they're going to have the lowest fixed interest rates. They're going to have the most flexible repayment plans. And this is a big perk to a lot of parents and guardians, that loan is given to the student in the student's name only. There is no co-signatory required for that. So no parent needs to have their name on that loan and go against your debt to income ratio. It is just the student's loan and their loan alone. So what do you need to do? You need to submit the FAFSA. Now the FAFSA, since most of you have not submitted a FAFSA yet, has anybody done one in the last 10 years? Other than You raise your hand. Did anybody do a FAFSA in the last 10 years? The reason why I bring this up is that the issues that were most common when it came to doing a FAFSA this last year were people who were trying to make a new account who already had an account. So if you've ever done a FAFSA before, do not try to make a new account, because what it'll do is it'll trigger the system to try to figure out if you're a duplicate or if you are an actual unique person who has just a very similar name and date of birth. So just try to recover your old account if you ever had one. Go through those security questions. Just do whatever you can to try to recover your original account. The other issue that always came up for a lot of people is that a parent or guardian, or a student for that matter, was trying to make an account for their counterpart. So when it comes to the FAFSA, parent or guardian has to have their own account and complete their portion of the digital FAFSA application. Students have to have their own account and complete their portions of the digital application. What was happening is that a parent would do their portion, they would create their account, do their portion, then they would try to create the account for their son or daughter, and then it would flag them as, are you a duplicate, or are you, like, what's going on here? There's something wrong, there's something amiss, because you do need to be separate people doing this together, or doing this individually on your own. And also, it's gonna make you say, like, what's your phone number, right? You can't use the same phone number, because most people do not have the same phone number as somebody else. You have one phone number as you're trying to log in. So the biggest issues that people run into when they're doing the FAFSA, again, are not trying to recover their original account, or trying to create an account for somebody that's not them. So this is a very important piece. Make your own accounts and then move forward with that. When you do the FAFSA, it'll probably take anywhere from 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes. But one really nice piece about the FAFSA now is that you don't have to dig up all of your financial statements, right? You don't have to dig up your tax returns from previous years. You just give authorization for the Department of Education to contact the IRS and get that information for you. So you don't have to dig up all of those different things. If you didn't file your taxes, then yes, you need to figure all those things out. But if you did, you should be good and in the clear. Yes, you're gonna have to say how much cash you have in your savings account and different things like that, but when it comes to all the nitty-gritty of the tax information, you can just say, just go to contact the IRS. You should already have it on file. Thank you very much. And it made things a lot easier for students and family members over this last year. So when it comes to the federal bucket, what we're really talking about is doing the FAFSA. This will open this year. We anticipate December 1st. Usually this opens on October 1st. This is something that you'll apply for each year because your financial circumstances could change. They could change for the worse. You could lose a job. You don't have as much funds anymore. You now have financial need that you didn't have before. It could change for the better. You could win the lottery. You have $1 million now. You no longer have financial need anymore. So you do this each year, and the federal government will review you to see, do you still have financial need or not? And then they'll make that appropriate for that academic term. So again, when it comes to the federal bucket, it's doing the FAFSA. So quickly, because I am an NDSU representative, and this isn't all about NDSU, but I do like to just bring this up briefly. The NDSU Tuition Award Program is specifically for North Dakota residents who get admitted to NDSU and submit a FAFSA. And if you do those three things, you can be considered for the North Dakota Tuition Award Program. What this does is it assures that students will have their base tuition and mandatory student fees covered for the next year. The big number you need to keep track of right here, though, if you want to see if you're going to be eligible for this or not, is an adjusted gross family income of $80,000 or less. And if you fit beneath that, you will more than likely qualify for the Tuition Award Program. Again, you have to be admitted, be from North Dakota, and submit a FAFSA to be considered. And if you're sitting there saying, hey, I think we're going to qualify for this, you're probably like, this is great. And if you're sitting there saying, we're not going to qualify for this, you're probably like, yeah, this is great, right? But I'm here to tell you that this is actually a big benefit to everybody, and the reason is this. I also sit on the scholarship committee for incoming first-year students, and I can tell you, because we know that our most financially needy students are covered by the Tuition Award Program, it allows us to divert certain scholarships that used to go to our most financially needy students and actually move them over to students who don't qualify for this, right? Like, what if you make $90,000? What if you make $100,000? Do we just get nothing? No. Now, because of the existence of this program, it allows us to move those funds to students who don't qualify for this. The other thing I always like to point out too, because if I was sitting in your shoes, I would be asking, where do these funds come from? Is this just jacked up tuition costs so that we can cover everybody else? No, this is actually a completely unique program. It is all funded by the NDSU Alumni Network. So they're the ones that generate the $2.5 million to ensure that this can be in existence. So I think that's pretty neat that we did this privately. Let's get into the state bucket. So now the state bucket, it really comes down to two different things. We're looking at grants and we're looking at scholarships. Fortunately, if you're a North Dakota resident, graduating from a North Dakota high school, which you are, or more than likely are, you can be considered for state grants in addition to federal grants. Now, here's one thing that's awesome about the state grant. The federal Pell Grant, if I can just use like an analogy of how much money you can make, is maybe this much to qualify for the federal Pell Grant. But for the state grant, your family can actually make this much, almost 3 times as much, and still be eligible for the North Dakota State Grant. The North Dakota State Grant is not on a sliding scale. If you're eligible for it, you just get it. It's $2,750. That's a big chunk of change. If you were one of those max Pell eligible students, you would just add that on top of there, and now you're sitting at $10,750. That's more than half of what it now costs to go to college, including your housing and meals, right? So that's a big chunk. So again, a lot of times I hear families say, we're not gonna qualify for anything, so we're not gonna do the FAFSA. You're right, when people say that, a lot of times they're saying that they're not gonna be eligible for the federal Pell Grant, and I agree, many people will not be eligible for the federal Pell Grant. But you know what, they might be eligible for the North Dakota State Grant, and that's $2,750. So that one, a lot more people are gonna be eligible for. All you have to do to be eligible for that, again, do your FAFSA, be a North Dakota resident, graduate from a North Dakota high school, and attend a North Dakota college. It's one of those incentive programs that try to attract or retain talented students who have the ability to go on to college, but maybe just need a little bit of additional financial help. Scholarships, another really big one. Now, some of you might remember this term, the North Dakota Academic Scholarship, the North Dakota Career and Technical Education Scholarship, or maybe you were already ready to roll when it came to the new scholarship that they've just renamed the North Dakota Scholarship. So I'm pretty sure if you go into, actually I know this for a fact, if you use the portal, not the portal, what is it called?
It's the Ed Portal.
Yeah, okay, the Ed Portal, yeah. Power School.
Yeah, Power School, what I said at the beginning.
Yes, at the beginning. If you go into Power School, you can actually click into, see if you are on track to qualify for the North Dakota Scholarship. So you have to be like choice ready is what they say. You have to be eligible to like go into college, go into the trades, or go into the military. And as long as you have 2 of those 3 things, you can be eligible for this scholarship, and it's equal to $1,500 a year for 4 years, so $6,000 max. Now, put that on top of, if you already had the Pell Grant, and the SEOG Grant, and the ND State Grant, and now the North Dakota the North Dakota Scholarship, now you're sitting at like over $12,000 of scholarship funds. When we're talking about people getting full rides, this is what people are talking about. When you're at $12,000, you have all of your tuition and student fees already covered at that point in time. And so now you can start to understand why people start saying, I have a full ride, because when they look at it, yeah, other than housing and meals, they do have a full ride based on their financial need and their scholarships. So what do you have to do to qualify for these things? Well, you gotta submit the FAFSA. Fortunately, when you do the FAFSA, you get considered for federal aid and state aid. So you don't have to do anything else. You just do the FAFSA once, and you can have it be considered for federal and state aid. When it comes to scholarships, you do have to maintain, you have to be on track for those scholarships. Again, you can go to Power School to see if you're on track for that and see what you need to do next. And then you do have to submit the scholarship application, which is typically due on like June 1st. It may be a couple days after that, but we'll just say June 1st. It doesn't open till January, so you can't apply for this yet, but you have to do that. And they are very firm on their deadline. If you do not submit it, you will not get the scholarship. So you just gotta make sure that you're doing that.
And Cory?
Yep.
I've probably reached out to most everybody who does qualify or how they can be on track to qualify too. So if you have questions, you are very welcome to contact Mrs. Ambrose and I.
Okay.
Help clarify some of those things.
Via email probably,
No, that's fine.
or how you reached out to them.
I did. I sent an email.
Yep.
Probably the worst time ever, the beginning of June.
So check your emails then, just go back into June or so, somewhere in there, and just see, so you can make sure that you're on track. Because a lot of times when it comes to like that career and tech ed side, you have to do the work keys exam. And that's not like a normal exam that you're just gonna take without somebody like prompting you or you knowing about it. So just keep in mind that there are things, but it's $1,500 and it's gonna be, $1,500 a year. So this is a really big one. Another big thing I just want to point out when it comes to the FAFSA, I mean, I'm sure most of you are looking at 2, 3, 4, 5 different colleges. And you're like, do I really have to do this for 5 times for each college? No, you can just do the FAFSA once. And in there, there's a section that says, which colleges do you want to receive your FAFSA? You can put, I want it to go to Concordia, I want it to go to MSU Moorhead, I want it to go to UND. You can select up to 20 colleges. That would be crazy. But you can select up to 20 colleges to receive the FAFSA. So you do it once, and it goes out to all of them. So you don't have to redo this for every single college you're looking at. Okay, so the next section that I talk about is really the scholarship section. And there is kind of an order to look at. We've already talked about the state one, but the one that you really want to focus on first are your university scholarships. Because if you think about this, if you're already planning to go to college, well then universities are kind of competing for you, right? If you've got 100 students and these 100 students are going to go to college, well, colleges are trying to compete for you, and the earlier they can get you a scholarship, the more likely you are to say yes to that college versus another college, right? If you got a full ride or even like $5,000 from college A, right now you might be like, well, I will just hang it up, I'm done, don't need to look anymore. Right, so when it comes to that, most colleges are going to have an earlier application deadline for their scholarships than places like Dollars for Scholars or the FM Area Foundation or even your own high school. Because if you think about it, like your own high school, like, they don't care which college you go to, they just want you to take these funds and go do what you do, right? Whereas college is like, we got to be quicker about this, otherwise somebody else is already going to offer a scholarship and they're going to go there. So when it comes to applying for scholarships, I always suggest submitting your college scholarship applications first, because primarily they're going to have the earliest application deadlines. And to prove that point, NDSU's scholarship application deadline is February 1st, which is well before the North Dakota scholarship, which was June 1st, and it's before Dollars for Scholars, which is April 1st, and it's certainly before the FM Area Foundation ones as well. So the college ones should be prioritized first. Then certainly get out there and look at those local ones, look at those private ones, look at employer scholarships. That one's a really big one. We're going to touch on that here in a little bit. But, a lot of parents or guardians, you work for a place that may offer some type of scholarship assistance to your dependents. And if you don't know, just contact your HR department to find out if there is any benefit like that. Maybe they don't, but maybe they do. And at this point in time, we're just trying to turn over every stone to see where is a few extra $100 that can help assist, my son or daughter to go to college. So what do you need to do here? You got to find eligible scholarships that you would be eligible to apply for, and then submit those scholarship applications. Now, when I'm talking about colleges, you're going to notice that a lot of colleges have 2 types of scholarships. A lot of those colleges have guaranteed merit-based scholarships, and then they also have like foundation scholarships that usually have like a name associated with them. So when I'm talking about these guaranteed scholarships, it's really like this top table. So for example, this is NDSU's table up here. You can use GPA, or you still, for like maybe 1 or 2 more cohorts, you can still use your ACT if you want to, but for the most part it's GPA. If you have a 3.0 or higher GPA, you're guaranteed a scholarship. You don't have to do anything but be admitted to this college, send your final transcript after you graduate from high school, and then attend that college, right? Or at least those are the requirements for NDSU. The transcript or the GPA that we're going to use for this scholarship at NDSU is based on your final high school transcript. So if you have a 4.0 right now, here's good motivation to keep working hard and keep that 4.0. If you're sitting at a 3.64, that's great. You still have a $1,000 scholarship, but here's motivation to try to strive and get that 3.65 by the time you finish, because again, the only thing that matters is your final high school transcript and the GPA that's found on that, and you're going to be awarded appropriately. Now again, those ones are those guaranteed merit-based scholarships. So if you're looking at college A, B, C, find out if they have these guaranteed, because many colleges do. But many colleges also have things like named scholarships that are tied to some type of endowment. NDSU certainly has these, and as we talked about how scholarships, there's a lot of them out there, and you can get kind of overwhelmed by all the scholarships that are out there. Certainly if you went to the NDSU scholarship portal and you just clicked through the pages, you'd get overwhelmed as well. There's 28 pages of scholarships. It's a lot to sort between what you should and should not apply to. So many colleges have tried to make this easier. So for example, at NDSU, we have a general scholarship application that students can do. This is the one I was saying is due by February 1st. This won't open until November 1st. There's nothing you need to do now, right, with regard to those scholarships. But you have to do the general scholarship application. And if you do that, it'll probably take about 15 or 20 minutes, and you click submit. Well, with all the information that's in that application, the scholarship committee then, on the back end, can match you to the scholarships that you are eligible for and leave you out of the ones you are not eligible for. So if there's a scholarship that comes up that says you have to be a North Dakota resident, boom, we can filter the list to just North Dakota residents. If there's a scholarship that says you gotta be going to the College of Engineering, we can, boom, filter that list and just get the students that are in the College of Engineering. So we can pinpoint exactly the students who we need to be reviewing when it comes to those scholarships. Here's a quick hack, or a quick tip. If you're a student who's like, you know what, I just can't decide between business administration and finance, do not select undecided. Just select business administration or finance, because if you select undecided, that means that we have to exclude you from every College of Business scholarship we have, because you're undecided. But if you're deciding between business administration and finance, you pick one of those, you can then be considered for College of Business scholarships. So if you truly are undecided and you just cannot select any major, by all means, select undecided. But if you are leaning one way or another, there's no harm in just selecting that. And if you get picked for a $5,000 scholarship, well, hey, maybe that's the decision you were waiting to see. You know, that here's the light. This is what you should do with your life, right? So just select a major if you at least have somewhat of an idea of what you want to go into. As I said, those are due on February 1st, which means that most students aren't going to find out if they've been selected for a scholarship until after the due date. So if you're looking at any college, you're probably not going to find out about these additional scholarships until after the due date of the scholarship application, because of course they want to make sure everybody gets considered, and then the scholarship committee is going to have to review all of those applicants. So that's kind of the timeline. The next one is that employer, right? So we'd already talked a little bit about how parents and guardians can be looking at employers to see if they offer some type of tuition assistance for a dependent. But out of all the students in here, all the seniors here, raise your hand if you have a job. And say that's at least half. Have you talked to your employer to see if they have tuition assistance? I mean, I drive by a lot of like Dairy Queens and McDonald's now, and there's a lot of places that are offering some type of tuition assistance because they're competing for employees. Like they're struggling to find employees, and so they've been more accommodating to knowing what are the needs of the people that are in that area. I coach our men's rugby club, and I have a few of the guys that work at UPS or FedEx, and they offer some type of tuition assistance. So not only do they get, you know, their 16, 17 bucks an hour, but they also get $3,500 a year to go towards tuition. So it can be a good perk to look and see like what places offer these types of tuition assistance, right? UPS, FedEx, Marvin Windows, Amazon, you know, a bunch of those restaurants, you know, fast food chains are starting to offer things like that as well. So it's worth looking into those things, right? Because you can find some more dollars there. And if you compound that on top of your scholarships and on top of your financial aid, again, you just chipping away until you get to that point where you're getting close to a full ride. So what do you need to do here? Well, you got to talk with your employer. If you're a student that's employed, if you're a parent guardian that's employed, just talk with your employer to find out what you need to do and submit their scholarship applications or their waivers or whatever it is. For example, like if you work for the North Dakota University system, or if you work at NDSU, right, you get a substantial discount off of tuition, right? So that's one of the perks that's out there. So just talk with your employers about that. The other thing then is your personal savings. So talk to a lot of families who, you know, yes, maybe they haven't been able to put away a lot, but they put away a little, or maybe they started a 529 plan a long time ago, right? They're trying to be mindful of, you know, this big cost that they're going to have in the future. And so, you know, even if you haven't done anything right now, if you have the ability now to start putting away a little bit, even if you're a student being able to put away a little bit, right? If you're like, hey, we were able to save up $1,000 for the next year. Again, that's just another chink off of the total amount that you have to pay. So keeping that in mind. When I would talk with students, honestly, we would have like pretty intense financial aid discussions, and sometimes those would happen in April or May, and I would say, do you have a summer job? Do you have a summer job planned? And they would say, yes. I'm like, how much money do you legitimately think you might be putting towards your college education? Because that's a real question, right? It's your education, it's your experience that you're going to be getting, it's you going to the wellness center, it's you going to the Bison Games, or you doing whatever it is, right? So you should have a little bit of stake in the game as well, right? And so I talk with students about that and say, well, how much, we're looking at this, I'm showing you what your scholarship is, I'm showing you what your financial aid is, I'm showing you still got $9,000 left to pay, so how much do you think that you can save up this summer? Like legitimately, don't overestimate this. Well, how much do you think? I think I could put away $2,000. I think that's what I give. Well, that's great because we can take $2,000 off the $8,000 you have left to pay, and that means that you're only left now with a student loan of $6,000. And I know that may not sound like you did a big dent, but when it comes down to that, 4 years later, it's going to be a big impact. So it's a good reason to start thinking about that. And certainly now, being that it's only September, and you have 11 months, right? 11 months before you really even have to pay your bill. And certainly there's an opportunity to make some money and put away some at this point in time. I talk about student first jobs here because there's a lot of students that will work while they're on campus too, and sometimes people get afraid about working when they're coming to college, especially in that first year, like there's just no way I'm going to be able to have enough time to work. I'm going to have to be studying. That's not going to be the case. You're going to find that you have a lot more time than you thought you did. You're going to be in the classroom for maybe 15 hours a week total. In high school, you're in the classroom for probably 35 hours a week. You got a lot of extra time there. And I'm not saying or advocating that you should be working a 40-hour work week or even a 20-hour work week. But I certainly say that, if you want to work, you could easily put in 10 hours a week if you want to. And again, I'm not saying you have to, but from what I've seen, from my experiences, is that a lot of times the students who do just a little bit of work like that, just are filling up their schedule a little bit with things they have to be at, they seem to adjust faster to college because they have the support of the other people they're meeting, they have the support of their staff or faculty member that's supervising them, but also they're being very intentional about their time because not only do I have class at this time, but I also have work at this time, and I can't miss this otherwise I'm going to get fired. I have to plan accordingly. And they're usually pretty accommodating that I'm just going to fire you right away if you don't show up to your first work shift. But people are trying to be more accountable when they do those things. So I do think if you are considering maybe having a job, you can do a little bit, especially those on-campus jobs because they are very familiar with you being a student first. The last area that we talked about are loans, okay? And again, this is the area that I want to save for the very end because I think that we should turn over every single stone first before we just start saying, I'll just take out a loan for the entire amount, right? And the sad reality is, this last year I was looking at a few students just going through budgets, and I noticed that there are a few students that I was looking at that were literally financing their entire college education off of loans, at least their first year. They're taking out $27,000 in their first year. And this is not coming from the federal government because the federal government caps you at $5,500, which means that they were getting private loans for this. So again, it's trying to chip away at this so you're not left with $25,000 left to pay at the end and just having student loans as the only option for you. So again, I always suggest those federal loans first, right? The federal loans are going to have the lowest interest, they're going to have the most flexible repayment plans for students, and it's going to be in the student's name only, no parent or guardian co-signatory required. But if you get to a point where you say, okay, we have looked at our loans, we have looked at our scholarships, and we have looked at our grants, and we have looked at our federal loans, but we still have stuff left to pay, right? You look at your personal finances, we still have things left to pay. This is a reality for a lot of people. Private loans becomes that last bucket that I suggest. And this is where you're applying maybe Bank of North Dakota, Wells Fargo. There are thousands of offers out there when it comes to private loans. And you can look at the options for yourself and see which ones are the best options for you. But this is kind of the last bucket, is those private loans. But I will tell you that students, if you apply for one of these private loans on your own, you will be denied. I don't know if I've ever met a student who got a private loan by themselves because they've not established enough credit. You don't own a house maybe you have a car, but maybe you haven't had it long enough to establish real credit, so typically you need to have a co-signatory, which means you need a parent or guardian or uncle or somebody who's saying, yeah, I'm willing to sign on this line with you, and if you default on your loan, I guess we're the one that's left to pay it, right? That's where these private loans come in, okay? So again, to be considered for these, you need to submit your FAFSA. That's how you get considered for the federal loans. When it comes to those private loans, you don't have to do anything with this right now. Most banks will say, do not apply for a loan unless your billing due date is 90 days away from now, which would really put you in like applying for these private loans in June. And by June, you should certainly know. If you're following the process and the timeline of submitting scholarship applications and your FAFSA and all those things, you should certainly know how much financial aid and resources you have to determine, do you even need to apply for private loans or not. But June is roughly the time that you're going to be applying for these. And don't be afraid of applying for them. It doesn't mean you have to take them. It's just an application for it. They're going to tell you if you're eligible or not, and they're going to tell you what the rates are. So oftentimes parents or students will apply for maybe 2 so they can see what the rates are, see what the offers are from those different entities. Okay, so this is really the one that, if you're taking a picture, this is kind of the picture to take, because this is really kind of the list of things that you should do, maybe the priority in which to do it. So the first thing that you want to do is your FAFSA. And again, this one, usually I'd say this is the first one because typically this opens in October. It opens October 1st, so it's the first thing you have access to. However, this year we know that it's more than likely going to open on December 1st. So you could swap this one around with the next one, which is submit your university scholarship applications, but you kind of get the idea. Those are really the 2 first things that you really want to be applying for. The next things are your local scholarships. Your North Dakota Dollars for Scholars scholarships. It's your FMRA Foundation scholarships. It's your high school scholarships. Start talking with your employers to find out if they have scholarships, tuition assistance. Start looking at employers that maybe have that if you're thinking about picking up a part-time job, right? Or at least being knowledgeable about what kind of offers are out there. Submit your state scholarship applications. Then once you're getting into the summer, if you do want to take out some of those private loans, maybe you only need to take out a small private loan, but you're submitting your loan applications at that point in time, and then reviewing the offers that you get from those entities. So what did the Bank of North Dakota offer you? What did Wells Fargo offer you? So that you can then decide what's our best option when it comes to this. Does one have an origination fee? Does one have a higher interest rate than the other? That's what you can do when you're looking over your offers. So this kind of brings me to the end of that presentation, which is where I go into some of our most frequently asked questions. And certainly I want to be able to put it out to the audience too, and if you have questions, we can go through those as well. But let me hit a few of these ones, since these ones are usually the ones that get asked during these types of presentations. So when do we pay for college? Do we pay as we go, or do we pay at the end? This is a really big one. So here's how your bill will be broken up. Your bill is going to be broken up between the fall semester and the spring semester. So if your total bill is $20,000 and you don't get any financial aid or scholarship or anything, right? You're going to be billed roughly $10,000 in the fall and $10,000 in the spring. It's going to be split up by that. Now, the next follow-up question usually is something to go about like student loans. Well, what if we are taking out student loans? So technically, you still have to pay your bill, and if you're using student loans to pay a portion of this bill, your student loan will be extracted in the fall and dispersed in the fall, and then extracted again in the spring and dispersed in the spring. But when do you pay those student loans back? Well, you pay those after you're done with college. So they are in deferment until you are done with college, or pause college. So for instance, I did take a break from college. I took 1 year break, and you can be sure that they were contacting me saying, when are you going to start paying back your loans? Because you've been out of school for 6 months now. I was like, whoa, I'm going back. Well, the federal government said, okay, we'll put it back in deferment. But the private loan said, nope, you got to start paying right now. And so what did I do? I had to start paying back that loan right then and there until I could get back into college. So anyways, the answer to that previous question, do you pay now or at the end? Well, you pay for your bill every semester, right? Otherwise, you won't be able to register for the next semester until you pay that bill. And whether you pay that off with scholarships, personal finances, or loans, you will pay that bill every semester. But if you are taking out those student loans, you can defer your payments on those loans until you are done with college or stop college. So it's kind of a double answer in there. Is it best to first use all our college savings and then use loans or pay as we go afterward? Yes. If you are using specifically college savings, yes, use those funds first. If you are using your personal rainy day savings, no, do not use that. You need those funds in case something bad were to happen. But if it is truly your college savings, there are multiple reasons why it would be good to use those savings first. First and foremost, when you do the FAFSA, it's going to ask you how much money do you have in savings. If you got $20,000 sitting there, they're gonna take that into account and say, well, you got $20,000, use some of that money to pay for your college. But two, let's say there is a situation where, for whatever reason, you do stop college after a year. Well, it certainly would be better to have said, well, we paid cash for that first year. You don't have a diploma to show for it right now, but you don't have a bill, you don't have a loan that was increasing in interest, and you don't have this now that's forcing you to go and take a job you don't want because you have to make these payments back right now. So certainly, from my perspective, it is better to use those savings first if that's what they were intended to be used for anyways. Next question, do scholarships and grants go directly to the college and show as a payment? Yes, specifically if they're like an institution, a university scholarship, or if they're a federal or a state grant, you will never see those. Those will just go right to your account. You'll see it as a deduction off of your bill. So if you have a $10,000 bill for the fall and you have a $5,000 scholarship package, you'll just see $5,000 deducted right from your account. Now, if we're talking about a North Dakota Dollars for Scholars scholarship, or maybe like Uncle Bernie's scholarship that you apply for out in Montana, they may send you a check, and then it's kind of up to you to bring to the university and say, here you go. But it is very important that you report those checks, because when it comes to certain financial aid consideration, if all of a sudden you show up with a $10,000 check, they're going to say, oh, okay, well, we're going to maybe have to make an adjustment on some of the other financial aid components here. So if you get those scholarships, you need to just make sure that you're reporting them so everything looks accurate from your end, and you don't have any surprises come October when they say, well, actually, because you sent this check in late, like, we have to just deduct it from this section here. What happens if we've already paid our balance due and a scholarship check shows up? Well, that's great. You're just going to be refunded that money back, right? So if you're like, oh yeah, well, we already paid our $10,000 balance, and all of a sudden a $1,000 scholarship check shows up from the FM Area Foundation. What do? We don't save that money. We don't keep that money. We just refund it right back to you. So students, if they haven't set up direct deposit, you'll just get a check, and you get to go down to the one-stop office, and you just get to pick up your $1,000 check. Or if you set up direct deposit to a student's account or a parent or guardian's account, it'll just put it right back into that account. So we're not going to keep your money, we're not going to steal your money, it's just going to go right back to you if you've already paid your balance due. What can I do if our income for the current year will be lower than what was reported on the FAFSA? This is a really big question, and it comes up all the time. So when you're doing your FAFSA, let's say you do it on December 1st, the tax information you are using is the tax information you submitted from this previous year. So the tax information that you submitted back in April, which technically is the income you made from the year prior, from 2023. And so you're like, well, gosh, our income in 2025 when we start college is going to be way different than it was back in 2023. So this is what I'll say. If your income has gone up, congratulations. You don't need to do anything at this point in time. It'll catch up to you in the future when you do the 2026 FAFSA application. So no need to do anything. Don't worry. If it has gone down, that's where we want you to do something. You submit the FAFSA as normal, as if there has been no change at all. That gives us our baseline. And then, when it becomes available in April, we'll ask you to submit a special circumstance form. And what this basically does is it allows you to raise your hand and say, we don't make as much money anymore, we need to possibly be adjusted based on our current income at this point in time. That'll put you into something called FAFSA verification, which then will ask you to send in W-2s and income statements so that we can make a special judgment to determine, do you now have a change? But bear in mind that your income may have been this, and then after that adjustment, it's here. You still may not have enough financial need to qualify for these grants, but it's still typically worth it if you think that there's been a substantial change. So that's called the special circumstance form. So you do your FAFSA as normal, and then we have you do a special circumstance form. And this is oftentimes when, somebody got reduced, lost a job, there was the passing away of a family member. Like, these are big, substantial changes, and we want to make sure that we can accommodate and help students get the financial resources they need after something like that happens. What is the best way to pay for college for a student who will not be receiving scholarships or anything from the FAFSA? That's the toughest one here. You got really two options. Pay for it out of your own pocket or get a loan. And unfortunately, that's kind of the situation that you're at. which fortunately you're all here right now, so you have the ability to at least start to prepare for things like this. But if you're not getting any scholarships whatsoever, and you're not getting any financial aid, i.e. grants, free money, that's the toughest one to answer, because it really just comes down to you pay for it or you take out a loan for it. So that's a tough one. When should a student commit to a college? Most colleges share a commitment deadline of May 1st of your senior year. And what that means is that you can be admitted to the college, you can apply for their housing, you can apply for their scholarships, you can select your housing, you can select your roommates, you can even register for class sometimes. You're still not necessarily committed until you say yes. Or you have the ability to cancel and not have any finances lost up to May 1st. There are some nuances with other colleges, so I can't speak for every college, but I can speak for NDSU. You have until May 1st to cancel and have all your, you put down $100 as a fee/deposit for the housing application. It's refundable up to May 1st, so you have ample time. That's usually when I say you should be able to make a decision at that point in time, right? Because you'll have so much information in front of you at that point. You'll have the estimated cost, you'll have your estimated financial aid, and you'll have your estimated scholarships at that point. Who do we contact if we still have questions about financial aid? Well, you can reach out to really any financial aid administrator from any college. They're all willing to help, but more than likely what I would say is start with your admission counselor. Every college has an admission counselor. They are your go-to person. It was just a little while ago that I used to be an admission counselor for Central Cass. I believe it's Kylie now. But just reach out to, has anybody been admitted to NDSU? It's okay, I'm not gonna be offended if anybody hasn't. Okay, once you get admitted to a college, typically your admission counselor is gonna be one of the first people to reach out to you. They'll reach out to you pretty much by email and by text message. And so when you have these questions, this is where students would be texting me and saying, hey, where else can I apply? I already submitted my NDSU scholarship application. And then I say, did you apply for any of your high school scholarships? They're like, what? And then I send them a link to their high school scholarship page. So that's who I reach out to. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for coming to the most exciting and exhilarating topic, financial aid. I really appreciate it. Does anybody have questions out there that they're wondering about, that they maybe still aren't clear on, or maybe they just want me to talk about it a little bit more on? No way, your favorite thing is to ask questions? Yeah, what do you got?
So you were talking that FAFSA, you're talking that you already have an account. Well, how far back do they go with these?
So the question is how far back do they go about that account? Do you know, did you do the FAFSA on a computer or on a piece of paper?
Paper.
Probably don't have an account then. You're probably good to create your own account at that point. That's a good question.
So do we both, as far as husband and wife, we both have to create an account?
You only need to have one listed contributor. So if you are a husband and wife, you only need one. Yep, that's a good question. Yeah.
I just have a tip for the FAFSA. When you ask for putting in your account or whatever, just remember to write down your FAFSA ID information and keep it somewhere. Because that happened between my daughter and my son, or my son and my daughter. I could not ever figure out for my son. So we missed out on a lot, but then figured it out for my daughter. So
They did make one big update on this. So now when you're looking for your username, you can use either your email or your phone number or your username. So you don't necessarily even have to remember your username. You can even just type in your phone number now, which is, yeah, it is a huge pain if you can't remember what your username is. But they did make that big change, which it actually helped us catch a student before his mom was going to create his account, because she put in her phone number again and it said this phone number is already associated with another account, and so it caught them before they were able to try to make the account for somebody else. So you can now just type in your phone number, which I've oftentimes had as like a parent who like, hey, I don't know what my username is. Oh, just put your phone number in and then pull them up. Yeah. But in general, when you're talking about college too, the most frustrating pressure point is usernames and passwords, no matter what college you're looking at. So just try to keep a booklet or on your phone. That's where I try to tell students to keep their username, password. Just keep it somewhere, because you think you're going to remember this, and then you don't. Or, here's another really big one too. A lot of students have like a computer that'll make a password for you, and it's like QR79 hashtag, like you have no idea what the password even is. That's great when you have your computer, but then all of a sudden you show up and you're like, oh, can you log into your account? Like, I don't even know what my password is. Like, don't do that. Create a password for yourself. Don't get the automated one because you'll never remember it. You'll never know it, right? So make your own password, save that password somewhere where you can access it.
Sorry if I missed this, but you send the FAFSA to the universities?
Yeah, so you don't have to send it to the university, but there's a specific question that says, where do you want us to send your FAFSA information? And that's where you can plug in the universities that you want it to go to.
Do you have to apply to those colleges before you do that?
You do not have to apply to those colleges before you do that, but do know that no college will process your FAFSA until you've first been admitted. It's kind of like they're saying, we will do the work on this if you first do the work to get admitted. Otherwise, it's just going to sit in something we call suspense. We get a lot of FAFSAs that sit in suspense. It's just this holding tank. And once we can find that this student now has been admitted, we'll pull it out of suspense and then attach it to that student. The way that they associate that is with social security number. So don't get too concerned if you're being asked to put in your social security number. That is so we can match you to the federal information. And there's other things too, but that's one of the pieces. We won't ask for like parents' social, it's the students. Good questions. Anything else?
I have a question, another one.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're asking you right.
Just shoot. People always start with
So
me.
what is, so as a student or a dependent, as far as federal grants, Pell grants and stuff, I'm trying to remember back to when I applied, but, when is he considered, an individual?
An independent?
Independent.
24.
24.
So essentially, here's how I try to explain this, right? Let's say you're Jeff Bezos, and you're like, I want my son or daughter to get some, like if they look at my income, they'll never get anything. So you're no longer my son, right? They don't do that. They don't allow you to do that. If you do that, they say, okay, if that's how it's going to be, you're eligible for $5,500 of unsubsidized federal loan. That's all you get, right? You'll get that, but you're not going to get the grants. So there's no way to like separate yourself from them because you're basically still a dependent. They don't allow you to do that because otherwise, for the most part, everybody would, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't think that's how it always used to be though.
Oh, like okay, so there are some specific scenarios. So if a student is like at harm or at risk of harm, so there are certain ways to like separate yourself, but it's very nuanced. So there's not like a clear answer I can give here.
No worries.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming tonight. I do have my contact card there if you have more specific questions that you wanted to ask, or if the question didn't get answered in the right way, you can feel free to grab my business card there. Also, since I am the NDSU rep, I did bring a couple little NDSU things, so if you want to grab a free swag item, by all means, grab one of those. But anyways, reach out if questions come up, and thanks again for coming tonight. I appreciate it.